fellow heathens, welcome back. Thanks for joining me today. So today we are wrapping up December, and what a December it was. It was like every other month. I did a lot of reading. I am currently still getting my way through the M&S Pomodoro, which is very good, but there's a lot left. It is like, I don't know, the third or fourth or one, the first week of January. I don't even know where I am, if I'm coming or going. And also lots and lots of coffee. May or may not be spiked. Anyway, moving on. Hi, welcome. I'm going to go through the books that I read in December. I posted a kind of a mid-month winter chills and thrills sort of a video in December of books that I've been reading. And my first lot of books were on that, so I'm not going to go into too much detail on these, but it was The Christmas Guest by Peter Swanson. This is very much a Christmas set, kind of really short little thriller novella, which starts off sounding very young in tone and then halfway through has the best twist, and I loved it. It's good if you want something short, but maybe for next Christmas. But if not, you know, if you don't mind reading it out of season. Then I also read The Gathering by C.J. Tudor. This is a vampire thriller in small town Alaska. Very gritty, very different. I'm not sure I enjoyed it quite that much, but it was, it was, if you want a thriller that's quite gritty, quite dark, but includes vampires in it, but not Anne Rice vampires, very kind of gritty, dreary sort of vampires. This is the one I probably prefer my vampires a little more sparkly. Then this is 30 Days of Night. This is by Jenny Lund Matson. This is set, this is actually a Scandinavian author, and this is a translated work, but they are in a really small town. It's kind of a bet between two authors, one very literary, one a kind of a crime fiction author, and they bet each other that they could write the best crime fiction in a month, in 30 days. And the reason they do this is because the literary author kind of poo-poos crime fiction, like, oh, it's not real, you know, everybody can write a crime novel. And she kind of goes away to, I can't remember if it's Alaska or Iceland, somewhere like that, and spends 30 days there supposedly to write this novel, but gets embroiled in a real life murder mystery, and she realizes just how hard writing a crime novel actually is. So I actually quite enjoyed that. Again, it was a bit different. And then the last one that I really enjoyed out of those is The Cautious Traveller's Guide to the Wastelands. This is such an interesting genre blend of horror, sci-fi, kind of dystopian murder mystery. So it's a little bit like Murder on the Orient Express, but add in all of those other elements as well. And you've got this it's based around the Trans-Siberian Express, but in this world, they have to go through kind of the wastelands, and this wastelands area is very kind of scary. There's basically all sorts of things out there, monsters, entities. You go out there, you die. That's it, you're a goner, bye-bye, see ya. And this train kind of makes this journey through there. And in the beginning, we learn that something happened on the last journey, and it's the next journey that this train is taking. And then you follow various staff members, and they kind of have various reasons for wanting to know what happened previously. Also the passengers on the train and kind of what happens on this particular crossing. And I really enjoyed this. Actually, the more I sit with it, so a bit like the C.J. Tudor book, the more I sit with it, the more I don't actually really like it that much. Whereas this one, the more I sit with this one, the more I like this. And I would really recommend that. Like I said, it's this kind of really genre blending horror, sci-fi, dystopian type of thing that I just thought was fantastic. And I don't really hear many people talking about this, and I feel it deserves a bit more love. So those were those books. Then if we kind of stay on the horror, I need a lot of coffee, on the kind of horror train, I read My Darling Dreadful Thing by Johanna Van Veen. I have been wanting to read this for ages. I actually think went to about 50 different Waterstones in London and in Brighton to try and get a copy of this, and I eventually did when it came out, and then it's just been sitting, and it has this fantastic cover. The premise of this just sounded really, really good. So, and I will say, I love Dutch authors. I tend to love most of their work, and Johanna Van Veen has got a new book coming out this year that sounds really fantastic. So what is this one about? This is kind of billed as a horror ghost story. It's also sapphic. It's kind of set around spiritualism. So you've got your main character her mother is, she does seances, but they're fake. However, the daughter has a spirit companion. And this spirit companion of hers kind of talks to her, comforts her. When her mother sets up these kind of fake seances, her spirit companion kind of takes over her body, and she says things, and she pretends that everybody's, lost loved ones are at these spirit readings. And then one day this woman comes to one of their readings, and she's just recently lost her husband, and the daughter, she puts on this performance for her and all of that. And the next day, this woman comes back and says to the mother, I'll buy your daughter from you. And I thought that was a bit weird. Like, she goes and she's like, oh yeah, I'll give you some money if you want to get rid of your daughter. I want you to come live with me. Right? Okay, cool. The mother is very abusive. The daughter looks a lot younger than she is. The mother kind of starves her to make sure she doesn't have a cycle, make sure she looks really, really young. But I think she's actually 20 or 21 in this book. And the woman that comes and gets her is quite surprised when she realizes how old she is. And then the story kind of has these two parts to it. So you have that sort of narrative, but then you also have sessions of therapy sessions between our main character and this therapist. And this is not a spoiler because it does say in the synopsis, someone is killed at this house she's taken to, and she's being interviewed by this doctor, by the psychiatrist, to figure out what actually happened. And you've got kind of their therapy sessions in here. And what I did love, so let's do the positives. What I did love about this book is I loved the element of, is she telling the truth? Did any of this actually happen? Does she actually see spirits? Or is she insane? Is she making it up? Is she lying? Is she genuinely mentally ill? She's seeing things. There's a lot of that back and forth in this book, which I really like. And I'm not sure where I land right now. But it's interesting. Actually, I probably shouldn't tell you where I land because that might be it wouldn't be a spoiler. I think you can it can go either way, right? So I liked that element. The relationship was weird. So the relationship between this girl and the woman that lost her husband, like I said, the beginning just kind of irked me, where she was just like, oh yeah, here's some money, I'll just take your daughter and off we go. And I was like, wait, hang on, this makes no sense. And it does kind of get explained by, I won't tell you, but it does kind of get explained why the mother wants to get rid of her. But it just seemed like I never really understood why this woman wanted the girl in the first place, to come with her, to go live with her. So I found the relationship kind of weird. It sort of gave me the ick. I didn't like that. But, you may feel differently. And yeah, I found it really interesting. It didn't scare me, but I loved this idea of, are these entities and spirits real? Is this happening, or is this happening in her head? What is really going on? I like that element. So I will definitely be picking up the new Johanna van Veen book, because although I would say, sorry, I never give, I'm terrible. I need to make a whole video about how I'm going to start rating books this year. But for this, I would say it's a solid 4-star read, 3.75 star read. And I'm just knocking off a bit for I didn't like the relationship aspect, but the rest of it I did like. Then I read a few shorty patooties. So I kind of got some of my shorter books in for this month. Again, if we're kind of continuing with horror, I attempted Coup de Grace by Sophia Adram. This book is only 100 pages long, and I DNF'd it at page 57. I just couldn't do it anymore. Okay. The premise here is this guy, he's intending to kill himself. And before he gets the chance to do it, he ends up in this sort of purgatory subway station. And I just have no comment on that. I was not enjoying my time with it. I don't know what I think. I just wasn't enjoying my time with it. So yeah. So if we go and we talk about more almost real life horror, this is Green Angel by Alice Hoffman. Now, this is a book that I have had on my shelves, and I am not joking, for years. Alice Hoffman has historically been one of my favorite authors. I got into Alice Hoffman many, many, many years ago, actually when I was a teenager, and I started reading Practical Magic because I love the movie as well. And I've read probably most of Alice Hoffman's books, actually. And there are some that I want to revisit now, years later. I then kind of stopped reading Alice Hoffman in favor of kind of other authors, but I do still very much love her writing. This has sat there forever. It's beautiful. The book itself is very beautiful. It is very short. You can see in the middle here, I'll try and show you. It has these kind of sections with sort of like drawings like that. It's very beautiful, but it's about a girl who, her and her family kind of live, they tend this garden, and they have vegetables, and they go and sell them in the city in this sort of world. It's kind of our world, but nondescript. And they do this, and she is kind of, her name is Green, and she's sort of seen as the shy, quiet one. She never really talks to people. She's only interested in the garden. She's not interested in people at all. Her sister is sort of the vibrant one. And when they go and sell their vegetables out on this particular day, the parents take the sister and they tell Green she has to stay at home. She's not particularly happy about it. She's kind of a bit annoyed because the only kind of interaction she does actually like is when she goes and sells the vegetables. Anyway, she's left behind, and then something happens, like a massive fire, an attack. It made me think of 9/11, if I'm totally honest, but like an attack happens in the city, and her parents and her sister never come back. And then it talks about sort of the aftermath, and also the aftermath of all of the other people in this village whose families have died. And it's about loss. It's about grief. It is hard to read at points, but it's beautiful. It's beautifully written. It's Alice Hoffman. And you kind of go through her journey of losing herself, of trying to find herself again. It's quite a gut-wrenching novel for a novel that's only like 115 pages long, novella. I would recommend it. I think it's really beautiful. I think it's really beautifully written. So it's definitely a 4-star read for me. And then the last shorty patootie I read is The Rainfall Market. This is by Yu Young Gwang. This is translated from the original Korean, so this is a Korean author. And I think it's very much in that vein of kind of the cozy fantasy realm. And there's a lot of these books, like I see a lot of like the Japanese author books and the Korean author books where they're around cafes and cats, and it tends to be sort of light fantasy, kind of cozy fantasy. And that's very much what this is. So the Rainfall Market is about a market called the Rainfall Market. Yeah. Where you can go, you have to get invited to it. And if you're unhappy with your life, and you go and you exchange your life and the things, your sadness and what makes you unhappy for your life, for kind of currency. And then you've got until from the beginning of the rainy season to the end of the rainy season to walk around this market and find yourself a new life, essentially. And you can trade in your money for a particular globe, for a particular life, and you will then be granted a hopefully better life than the one that you're living. Love that concept. Wish I could go there. Send me to the Rainfall Market right now. And this is kind of what this girl does. She's very unhappy, and she goes, but she gets a golden ticket, which is really exciting. And she gets to go to this market, and you kind of, you take her journey through the market, kind of seeing these different lives. It's a little bit like The Midnight Library by Matt Haig, if you've read that. And there's kind of an underlying sort of mystery in this market. She gets a cat companion, of course she does. It's very sweet. I like the idea and a lot of the kind of musings on being unhappy in your life. What would you trade it in for? Is the grass always greener? So I think that's very much, to me at least, the message of the book. What I will say is I have realized, because I've tried a few now, I'm not a cozy fantasy kind of gal. There's very few sort of cozy mystery, cozy fantasy that I like. I like things with a much harder edge to it. Don't get me wrong, it was sweet, it was lovely. If you like that kind of thing, absolutely recommend it. Again, it's a short read. I think a lot of people would really enjoy this, and I know it's done really, really well. But for my personal reading taste, although I liked it, and I can totally see how other people would like it, it's not necessarily, for me, I wanted this to be much harder hitting, you know what I mean? But it's very sweet, and for the genre it is, I would recommend it. A lovely book. Then I did a reread of a series that has been one of my favorite series for many years. And I was like, you know what? It's December. I'm going to treat myself and reread the Caravel series. So Caravel, Legendary, I've got Finale in the middle there, which makes no sense, but that's the third book. So Caravel, Legendary and Finale. I have loved these books ever since I first read them a number of years ago. I now have, I don't know if you can see them back there, but I have some gorgeous special editions of them. I love them. And the reread, I actually enjoyed it more, and it cemented my absolute freaking love for this series. I also reread it because the Christmas special came out. And Spectacular came out, which is just gorgeous, which I also obviously read over Christmas and absolutely loved it. Spectacular, you kind of do have to read. You have to understand the Caravel world to read this. But Spectacular is a, oh no, if I tell you what happens, well, no, you've got to read Caravel. But just know that Spectacular is like a Christmas special for the Caravel series, and it's fabulous. I loved it, and the book itself is gorgeous as well. But if you don't know what Caravel is about, it is about this game that Legend, our game master, he has magic, and he sets up these games, this Caravel, where people come and they participate. They have to be invited by Legend. And in our first story, you've got our two sisters, Scarlet and Tella, and they, so Tella has been promised in marriage to someone she's never met by her really awful and trigger warning abuse father. And her sister is dissatisfied with living on this tiny island. She wants to kind of get away from her father. She wants to get her sister away from this arranged marriage. And she basically gets them invited to Caravel, to take part in Caravel. So they basically run off. Now, the sister in the beginning is really hoping to come back for her wedding. So they run off to Caravel and they participate in the first Caravel. Finale is very much a sequel, a continuation, so it kind of picks up where Caravel left off. So I won't tell you what the content is because that'll spoil Caravel. And then Legendary is obviously the kind of conclusion to both Tella and Scarlet's, Legends and Julian's storylines. And I think Finale is actually my favorite out of the three, but this series is a 6-star series. The whole, like, I started reading this, and over basically 3 days, I read these books. I just love it. I love everything. I love the magic. I love the descriptions of Caravel. I love the relation. This is romantasy at its best. The romance, is so good. Also, if you want romance with not too much spice, these are very, very good for that. It's just gut-wrenchingly beautiful. The central sister relationship as well, so beautiful, so beautiful. And this kind of, what would you do for love? Whether it's love for your sister, whether it's love for a man, whether it's, it just is, there are stakes, there are high stakes in this. I love every single second I spent with the series, and I'll probably read it again. That's how much I love it. Then I am in my romantasy era, right? I am in my fantasy era, and I love my romance fantasy. So another series that I wrapped up is The Kingdom of the Feared. So this is Kingdom of the Feared. This is the third book in the Kingdom of the Wicked series. I have been saving this because I adore Kingdom of the Wicked, and I adore the first two books. And actually, Kingdom of the Curse, the second book, is probably my favorite, but Kingdom of the Feared, so good. I won't tell you what this is about because that'll spoil the series if you want to read it, but the series itself is based around the 7 princes of hell. And these books very much focus on Wrath. And he meets Amelia, who is a witch in kind of Sicily. And there is a curse on hell. There is a curse that needs to be broken. There is a bond between Wrath and Amelia that kind of we find out throughout the series. It takes place in kind of the human world in the beginning book pretty completely. And then when we get to the second and third book, we're in hell, which is fabulous. Take me to hell right now. And you meet all of his brothers. So you have wrath, you have gluttony, you have sloth, you have envy, you have greed, you have pride. They're all fabulous. I love the series. I absolutely adore the series. One of my favorite fantasy series. And speaking of that, I read Throne of the Fallen because, of course, I read that and I was, I've got to read. This is kind of Carrie Maniscalco's spin-off series of this. So this series, this is 2 books deep. The second book I'll be reading this month because this one I loved. And it basically, each one focuses on another one of the princes of hell and their romance with someone. So this one focuses on Envy, who I really love. I really love Envy. What I will say about this is, I think you do have to, people say you don't, but I feel like you'll miss certain things. There's a lot of Easter eggs, there's a lot of references back to events that happen in Kingdom of the Feared. So I personally would suggest, and they're fabulous, so please do, reading Kingdom of the Wicked series and then starting with the series. Also, Wrath and Amelia appear here, and you will get spoiled for Kingdom of the Wicked in this book. So if you don't want to read it, fine, but you will get spoiled. So like I said, they make an appearance, which I love, and Kerry has put little Easter eggs in from the kind of Kingdom of the Feared book, so it's great. You know, if you're a fan of the series. But this one focuses on Envy. And what's cool about this one is he is kind of like Bridgerton meets romance. It's great. Fantasy. It's great. So it's kind of like the human world in this one is sort of Bridgerton-esque. And there's this painter, and she makes these lovely paintings in her world. And she has a certain ability. And Prince Envy is playing a game. Now, he was cursed by the Fae King, and his particular realm, so the Envy realm, is currently crumbling, and he's trying to A, stop it from crumbling, and B, not let anyone know that this is happening. But in order to do this, he's got to play this game that Lennox, the Fae King, the Unseelie King, has kind of put in motion. And the reason his kingdom is crumbling is because he was cursed by Lennox for something that happened in the past. So again, it kind of ties back to Kingdom of the Wicked. So he's playing this game, and part of this game kind of takes him into this Bridgerton-esque human realm where he meets Camilla, this painter. And she's kind of one of his clues, and he asks her to paint a throne for him. And then we kind of go from there, and we make our way through the intrigue of what happened in the past in this game. The romance between Camilla and Envy. Oh, I loved it. Oh, I loved it. I love Camilla. She's fantastic. And there's kind of twists and turns. It's a really big book. It's not the shortest book. It's like over 550 pages. Adored every second of it. Flew through this. Highly recommend. Cannot wait to get to Throne of Secrets, which is the next one. And then I will have completed, I'll be up to date in the series. Then, if you like Caravel, may I suggest The Winter Garden by Alexandra Bell. Now, with a bit of a disclaimer. So The Winter Garden, when you read the synopsis, it basically says it's about a woman who runs, she's meant to be getting married. She really, really doesn't want to get married. And she kind of runs away from her marriage, and she's chasing after this winter garden that appeared to her when she was a child. So in the beginning, you kind of get the backstory of her as a child, and her mother was dying. And when she saw her mother kind of called her to, say goodbye, essentially. And she got scared when she saw her mother, and she kind of ran away. And she ran outside, and she was crying. She was in despair. And she found this kind of winter garden, this sort of magical, fairy-esque garden. And then her mother dies, and her father basically tells her, "You wicked, horrible child, you couldn't even say goodbye to her mother," not realizing that this poor child at like 5-6 years old was just really scared. But she's kind of beaten herself up about it for the rest of her life. And then she's now on her own as an adult, and she's very much expected to get married, and she really, really doesn't want to get married. So she kind of leaves her groom at the altar, and then she goes on a kind of a quest around the world, and she's really obsessed with this winter garden. But then you have a secondary storyline of her friend who is American and is kind of new money. So this is sort of Victorian England, new money. And what she wants is a title. So she decides she really wants to get married. And then this book goes through years of their life. And what I would say is I was expecting more of the winter garden, right? Because what it tells you in the synopsis is that they compete to host or stage the best winter garden, and they do, but that happens right at the end of the book. So most of this book focuses on these two women, their relationships, their choices in life. I cried a lot reading this book. There are a lot of things that kind of hit home for me. There are a lot of things that would be, I guess, personal triggers for me, death of a parent, all of that kind of stuff. You know, there's the idea of the choices we make in life. You know, it leads you down one path. You could have taken another choice that would have led you down another path. You know, were you right or wrong? There's abuse in here, so that there's quite a few trigger warnings, I would say, actually, in this book. It's not as light and fluffy, so it's not Caravel. It does have that aspect of this magical winter garden that they stage, but like I say, that's very much towards the end of the book. Beautifully described, fantastic. But this is more a historical fiction on women's agency, you know, marriage, spousal abuse, all of that, rather than necessarily with a bit of magical realism or a bit of magic kind of thrown in the end, which is really, really good. But overall, I think about this book a lot. So I really enjoyed it, and it hit home with me in many ways, but it wasn't what I was expecting. So know that, because I think a lot of people might make that mistake, because it's what it sounds like on the back. So then, another Fae book. So this is How Does It Feel? The Infatuated Fae book 1. Oh, that's fun good. I enjoy this. This is so much fun. This is by Jean O'Reilly. This is the first book in the series. I will be purchasing the second book and reading it because the way this one ended, loved it. So the setup for this one is you've got a woman who thinks she saw a fae when she was younger. And ever since then, she's kind of been obsessed with wings and winged creatures. And she becomes oh God, I forgot the name for it, but she basically studies kind of insects and plants. And one day she's out in the forest, in the woods, in this area where she lives, and she's particularly obsessed with butterflies. And she's looking for this rare butterfly, and she kind of wanders into sort of a mushroom ring, following this sort of very rare, like moth-like butterfly that she thought she saw. And she falls down into fairy. And she's captured by the prince of the Unseelie court, who is mean. And throughout sort of the first third of this book, boy, do they try to kill her. She encounters some, they try to kill her multiple times because they believe that she is a human assassin sent to kill the fairy king, fairy prince. And boy, I loved this book, this relationship. I don't know why I love it. I really shouldn't, but I do. I really do. I had the best time reading this. It's unhinged. This is an unhinged fairy romance. I mean, it's unhinged, but it's the best. Like you can see, I'm smiling thinking about this book. I loved it so much. I highly recommend. Then I read The Bone Spindle by Leslie Vedder. I showed this in my haul, and this is very rare for me. I bought it and read it like literally a week or two afterwards. So I'm going to drink, my throat's getting dry. So, just because something was like, I want to read this. And the front it says, kiss the prince, break the curse. And it's so sweet. This is a YA book, but I had such a great time reading this. So, you've got, oh God, what was her name? Fee, yeah. So you've got Fee, who is kind of like a bounty hunter, not a bounty hunter, like a treasure hunter. And she is rooting around in this kind of castle one day, and she pricks her finger on a spindle. And it turns out that she is then being tasked with awakening the Briar Rose, who is the slumbering prince of this castle. And him and his family have been asleep for like 100 years or something. It's a whatchamacallit, the Sleeping Beauty. It's like a gender bent retelling of Sleeping Beauty. And she teams up with another girl who is also like a treasure hunter. And they go on this mission to try and awaken Briar Rose and try to lift this curse. And that's kind of, I don't want to give away too much of the story because it is so much fun. Fee and, I'm trying to remember, what was her name? Shane. Yeah, it is Shane. Of course it's Shane, because it made me think of Shane from the L Word. So she teams up with Shane. Shane is a girl, but Shane is queer. And she's fantastic. That's why she makes me think of Shane from the L Word. And the two of them are swashbuckling, knife-wielding. They are tough. The prince in this is the softie. The prince in this is the one kind of spouting things about true love and fated mates and all of this. It is so good. You also have Red, who reminds me of Little Red Riding Hood a little bit, and then you get some wolves in this. You get them going on this mission, on this journey. There's peril, there's stakes. You know, they have to try and find the prince. It's just so much fun. I think that this would be the perfect book to give to a teenage girl, because it's so empowering as well, from this kind of point of view of these two strong female characters. You know, they're the ones that are going to save the prince. They're going to break the curse. You know, it's so good. And there is a second book. Annoyingly, Waterstones had the second book when I bought the first one, but I was like, now let me just buy the first one and see. And then, of course, when I went back a couple of days ago, it was gone, so I need to order it. But I absolutely want to read the second book. This is so, so much fun. So if you want a gender-bent, feminist, go girls, riot girl version of Sleeping Beauty, that is the one. Then I read what I would say is my new favorite. I'm going to count this as a 2025 book when I do my year-end wrap-ups, because wow, was this book good. So this is Heavenly Bodies by Imani Eru. This is a romantasy. Oh, wowzers, was this good. I loved I'm really happy I got the Schooldraw special edition as well. I love every single second of this book. I cannot wait for the second book to come out. I believe it's November. It is gorgeous. It is 6-star, no notes, gorgeous. I laughed, I cried. The romance was delicious. It kept me, my heart in my throat, kept me on a roller coaster, wanting to know what was going to happen. It was so good. The romance was superb. There's a bit of spice. It was so, so good. So also the concept. So you can see heavenly bodies, the sun and the moon. So in this world, you have these kind of kingdoms, and they worship the stars. Now, the stars are based on like astrology. So Ariat, who is Aries, the god of war. You have Taurus, Pisces, Taurus. So you can see there, they list all of so it's basically like the signs of the zodiac, but slightly different names to them. And they kind of worshipped in this kingdom. And they also have their patronage to certain kingdoms. So our main girl, her kingdom is kind of seen as darkness. So Ariat is kind of their god. And then our main guy, his kingdom is seen as light. And there's a prophecy about her when she was born that says she is destined to fall in love with a star and kill him. And Ariat not happy about this. So he comes to kill her. And he can't. She survives his kind of death blow, which shouldn't happen, but her family is killed in the process. So she runs, and she ends up in the light kingdom, and they kind of take her in, and they say to her, the king says to her, my son is going to train you, and we want to use you as a weapon to get rid of Ariat, because they essentially have always been at war with the kind of the kingdom of darkness, and they want to use her as a weapon. And the king's plan is to sort of overthrow and take over her country, because essentially she's now the queen. But she's kind of the queen in exile. She's in hiding. So she's hiding from Ariat. And it kind of goes from there. The sort of the magic system, the whole thing about the stars, the kind of the fates, the prophecies, gorgeous, beautifully written. But I loved that. I love anything with astrology and tarot and that kind of thing. And this really kind of has that. Again, in like Caravel, you have the fates and like the tarot cards, which I love. So I love that in this. The romance is sensational, so good. Slow burn, kind of enemies to lovers, but just exquisite. You have some battles, you have some intrigue, you have some betrayal. It's just the journey of this book is gorgeous. The ending had me going, no, I need book 2. I just loved everything about this book. Hugely recommend if that sounds good, if you like romantasy books. I think this is going to be one of the romantasy books of 2025. And final book, I won't talk too much about it, but it was The Cursed by Harper L. Woods. This completes another series for me, so I'm on a roll now. That will be in my next video, but that's something to aim for 2025. But this is the second book in the coven. I loved it. I have heard people say they didn't like it. Love this series. Dark academia, witches, vampires. It's super spicy. So, I mean, it's super spicy. Very, very unhealthy relationship, but I loved it. I like dark and unhealthy relationships. That's all I'm saying. It was fantastic. This whole series, 5-star series for me. Absolutely love it. And that's it. Let me know if you've read any of those books. Cheers to 2025, and I'll speak to you all very soon. Bye.